You know that feeling when you experience a moment so overwhelming, so packed with years and years of pent-up emotion that words just completely fail you? Well, Genesis chapter 45 contains one of the most dramatic, emotionally charged climaxes in all of ancient literature. We're jumping right into the exact moment where a highly powerful ruler literally can no longer hide true identity from the very brothers who betrayed him decades earlier.
Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Genesis chapter 45 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Context and the reveal. 2. God's plan over famine. 3. Relocating to Goshen. 4. Pharaoh's gifts and departure. 5. Jacob revived. And finally, 6. Lessons from chapter 45. Let's dive in. To start, let's anchor ourselves right here in chapter 45. Just to give us a quick bit of context before we begin, Joseph's brothers have traveled down to Egypt looking for food because there is a massive, deadly famine going on. They're standing in front of this harsh Egyptian ruler who has been testing them severely, and they are completely unaware that this powerful man is actually their own brother. In this explainer, we're going to walk through the text exactly as it happens, verse by verse. We're looking strictly at the literal events on the ground, who says what, who does what, and how this incredibly tense situation finally resolves itself.
Now, a quick note on our approach today. We're relying entirely on a concept called pashhat. Pashhat is a Hebrew term that simply means the clear, literal interpretation of the text. So we're not diving into Kabbalah, hidden secrets, or deep allegorical symbolism today. Honestly, we don't need to. The literal historical story of what happens in this room is so rich, so dramatic, and so deeply human that just understanding the plain facts is profoundly rewarding all on its own.
Section 1. Context and the reveal. Let's move to the opening verses. Verse 1 kicks off right after Joseph hears his brother Judah give this passionate, totally selfless speech offering his own life in place of their younger brother Benjamin. Hearing this absolute reversal of how they used to behave, Joseph hits his absolute limit. The text tells us he literally could no longer control himself in front of his attendants. He cries out, "Make everyone leave my presence." He completely clears the room. Guards, servants, translators out. He needs to be completely alone with his brothers. Verse 2 says he wept so loudly that the Egyptians outside actually heard him, and the news of this massive emotional outburst flew straight to Pharaoh's royal household. Then, boom, verse 3 hits us with the absolute earth-shattering climax. Joseph drops the intimidating Egyptian ruler act entirely. No translator, speaking to them directly in their native language, he drops the ultimate bombshell. "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" Just pause and imagine the sheer shock in that room. The text explicitly says his brothers couldn't even answer him. They were paralyzed, completely terrified. Think about it. This immensely powerful man, who literally holds their lives in his hands, is the vulnerable teenage brother they mercilessly sold into slavery 22 years ago. The silence, the guilt, the terror, it must have been definite. Section 2. God's plan over famine. So here's the crucial turning point in verses 4 and 5. Joseph quickly pivots from his own high emotion to deeply empathetic reassurance. He sees them totally frozen in panic, right? So he calls them closer. He repeats, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt." Notice he doesn't ignore the elephant in the room. He acknowledges the betrayal head on. But instantly he comforts them so they aren't crushed by their own guilt. He explicitly commands them in verse 5, "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here." And then he shares this breathtaking revelation. He's completely reframed his own decades of suffering. He tells them it wasn't really them who sent him to Egypt. It was God. God orchestrated this entire painful journey to save their lives. He says, to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. He even mentions God made him father to Pharaoh, which in ancient Egypt is a literal title for a vizier or prime minister. God gave him that exact supreme authority specifically to protect his family. Joseph then lays out the incredibly harsh reality of their situation in verse 6 to explain why they need to act fast. To put it in perspective, 2 years of severe, devastating famine have already passed, but there are still 5 more relentless years coming where there will be absolutely no plowing and no harvesting. The agricultural system is completely broken. If his brothers stay in Canaan, they're going to starve to death. The danger is far from over. Section 3. Relocating to Goshen. With those 5 years of famine staring them down, Joseph flips straight into pure logistics mode. In verses 9 through 13, he urges his brothers to hurry back to their father, no delays. He gives them a bold message for Jacob: God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. His plan is brilliantly specific. He tells them to move the entire extended family to an area called Goshen. Goshen was this highly fertile region in the eastern delta of Egypt, a perfect place for a massive family of shepherds to safely raise livestock. He promises that in Goshen, he'll personally provide for everyone, their kids, grandkids, flocks, the whole shebang. Then, to shatter any lingering doubts, he tells them, and points out Benjamin specifically, to look closely at him, to see that it is my own mouth speaking to you. No interpreter, just Joseph.
After laying out this massive plan, the emotional dam just completely bursts, again in verses 14 and 15. We see this incredibly moving physical reunion. Joseph starts with Benjamin, his only full brother from their mother Rachel. He throws his arms around Benjamin's neck, weeping, and Benjamin weeps right back. Then Joseph moves to the rest of his brothers. He kisses all of them and weeps over them, totally breaking through that physical and emotional wall of past trauma. It's an act of absolute forgiveness. And only after this huge release of emotion does the text say, afterwards, his brothers talked with him. The fear was finally gone. They could just converse as brothers.
Section 4, Pharaoh's gifts and departure. Next, in verse 16, the camera kind of pans out from that private room. Word gets out that Joseph's brothers have arrived, and it reaches Pharaoh's palace. Now, you might think a native Egyptian ruler would be annoyed by a huge foreign family of shepherds moving in, right? But the text says Pharaoh and his officials were highly pleased. Joseph brilliantly saved their country from starvation, and they are eager to repay him. Pharaoh actually intervenes with amazing generosity. He gives the brothers clear, authoritative steps: load up, return to Canaan, pack up the families, and come back. But he goes a massive step further. He commands them to take official Egyptian carts for their wives and children. This is huge. These carts were essentially restricted royal technology. It's an incredible sign of favor. Pharaoh even says, never mind about your belongings, because the best of all the land of Egypt will be yours. They don't even need to pack their old furniture.
In verses 21 through 23, Joseph equips them for the journey exactly as Pharaoh ordered. He gives them the royal carts, plenty of provisions, and brand new clothes for everyone. But notice the overwhelming favor he shows to his full brother, Benjamin. Benjamin specifically gets 300 shekels of silver. That is an absolute fortune, plus he gets 5 sets of clothes. Joseph also organizes a massive, wealthy caravan to send straight to his aging father, 10 donkeys loaded with Egypt's best goods, and 10 female donkeys packed with grain and bread to sustain Jacob on the trip down. As they're packing up the carts to leave, Joseph drops this brilliant, super relatable piece of advice in verse 24. He just says, don't quarrel on the way. The literal Hebrew word can mean do not be agitated or do not quarrel. Joseph has incredible psychological insight here. He knows they have a long road trip ahead, and they might spend the whole time bickering about whose fault it was they sold him, or stressing over who has to break the news to Jacob. He's firmly telling them, look, the past is forgiven. Don't fight about it. Just focus on the mission to save our family. Section 5, Jacob revived. So the scene shifts in verse 25. The brothers finally make it back home to Canaan. They walk up to their aging father Jacob, who, remember, has spent over 22 agonizing years believing his favorite son was violently torn to pieces by a wild animal. And in verse 26, they just blurt it out. Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt. The text gives us Jacob's immediate visceral reaction. And honestly, it's heartbreaking. He is stunned. The literal Hebrew verb implies his heart grew numb or cold. It was just entirely too much to process. He simply didn't believe them. It sounded like some cruel, impossible fantasy. But then we get this beautiful transition in verse 27. The brothers start relaying all the specific words Joseph said. Even then, words alone weren't enough. The real turning point? Jacob walks outside and actually sees the physical Egyptian carts. Seeing these undeniable royal state wagons, technology that simply did not exist among Canaanite shepherds, his shocked disbelief totally transforms. The text says, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. That tangible proof woke him up from decades of mourning. We end this narrative arc in verse 28 with a profound declaration. And notice, the text specifically switches back to calling him Israel here, signaling a massive renewal of his spiritual identity. Israel joyfully declares, I'm convinced. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. His life suddenly has meaning again. The family that was violently shattered decades ago is finally on the clear path to being reunited.
Section 6. Lessons from Chapter 45. Let's pull all this together. We've stuck strictly to the pashhat, the plain literal meaning, but even on this simple level, this chapter is absolutely loaded with practical wisdom. The events here beautifully showcase the sheer power of absolute forgiveness. Joseph had the full authority to execute his brothers on the spot, but he chose mercy, single-handedly breaking a cycle of revenge. We also learn how crucial it is to see the bigger picture during hard times. Joseph chose to see God's hand preserving life, rather than just staying bitter about his suffering. We see the priority of family reconciliation over ancient grudges. And finally, the value of trusting God's unseen provision. Think about that. Even as a devastating famine was destroying the world, absolute safety and provision had already been positioned in Egypt years in advance. Sometimes what looks like total disaster is actually just the path to a deliverance that's already been prepared for us.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. How can you apply this level of forgiveness to relationships in your own life? Joseph's profound example, letting go of past hurts, refusing to quarrel on the way, and proactively caring for the people who wronged him, it's deeply challenging, but man, it is incredibly inspiring for us today. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.